In this lab, we will continue with the database creation in the using PostgreSQL. So we want to under the server, you will see PostgreSQL. Connect to it, and then once you are connected, you will see this elephant kind of face, and then click on the database and right click on the Postgre and click on the query tool, and that will open the query window like this. And then you can start creating the table. So we want to create classroom. Classroom has 3 attributes: building, room number, capacity. Building is not null and it is of length 15 and it is character type. Room number is character type with the length 7 and it is not null. Capacity is integer and the default value is null. So if nothing is entered, then null will be written. And the primary key is building and the room number. So building and the room number, they together becomes the primary key. So it should be unique together. So building, room number, so none of this combination will be repeating. So like over here we have Watson twice, here's the building, but you see this room number are different. So Watson 100 and Watson 120, they are 2 different combination. They are the primary keys together. So yeah, so we want to insert the values Packard 101 and the capacity is 500, building Painter, room number is 514, capacity is 10, building is Taylor, room number is 3128 and the capacity is 70, building is Watson, room number is 100, capacity is 30, building is Watson, room number is 120, capacity is 50. Let's run this. And so to see the data entered, to see the table, we need to type select all from classroom. So now you see the table over here. Let's make this bit bigger. So you see all this data is being entered. Now let's proceed to the other one. So next is we want to create table department. So let's see what are the inputs of the department. So the department values are here. So let's just copy and paste. Okay, so the department table, create table department, open bracket. So the attributes are department underscore name, building and budget. And department underscore name is of varchar type and the length is 20 and it is not null. So we cannot leave it empty. Building is of data type varchar and it is of length 15 and the default is null. So if nothing is entered, then null will be showing up. The next is budget. It is of data type decimal, and the integer, the whole number is of length 12, and the decimal part is of length 2, and the default is null. If nothing is entered, then null will be automatically entered. Primary key is department underscore name. So now in this one, we insert into department values bracket. So department underscore name is unique, is the primary key. So the first value is department underscore name, and it cannot repeat. So as you can see, biology, computing science, electrical engineering, finance, history, music, physics, all are different. And the building is Watson, Taylor, Taylor, Painter, Painter, Packard, Watson, and the budget is 90,000.00, 300,000.00, and 85,000.00, 200,000.00, 150,000.00, 80,000.00, and 200,000.00. So we run this, and to see the department table, we will run the command select all from department, and run this. Let's make that bigger. So we see all these values being entered. So the primary key is shown by pk, and it is of character varying. Okay, so we move on to the next one. The next one is create table course, and there are some values being entered in it. These are the values. Let's make the output smaller. Okay, so we will create that table. Okay, so here we are creating table course, and the attributes are course underscore id, which is of varchar type, and it is of length 8, and it is not null. Title, it is of type varchar, length of 50, and the default is null. So if nothing is entered, then null will be put in place. The next attribute is department underscore name. It is of type varchar, and it is of length 20, and it is not null. So department underscore name and course underscore id cannot be null. And we remember that department underscore name is the primary key of the table department. So this is a foreign key here. Credits is the next attribute is credits, and it is of data type integer, and the default is null. So if nothing is entered, then null will be entered. And the primary key is course underscore ID, and the foreign key department underscore name references department, the attribute department underscore name on delete restrict. So if we want to delete a department underscore name in this table course, then it will put a restriction, because we have to delete the department name in the department table as well. So and insert into course values. So course ID, which is a primary key, so it cannot repeat. So we see all these courses should be different. None of it should repeat. So bio 101, bio 301, bio 399, CS 101, CS 190, CS 315, CS 319, CS 347, EE 181, FIN 201, HIS 351, MU 199, Phi 101. Now the next attribute is title. So intro to biology, genetics, computational biology. So it is of length 50. Intro to computing science, game design, robotics, image processing, database system concepts, intro to digital systems, investment banking, world history, music video production, physical principles. The next attribute is department name, which is biology. That can repeat because it's not a key. It's just a foreign key, so it can repeat. Biology, 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 computing science, electrical engineering, finance, history, music, physics. And the next attribute is credits. So we have 4 that can repeat as well because it's not a primary key. 3, 4, 3, 3, 3, 3, 4. So we run that. And to see the table, we have to run the command select all from split course. So select all from course. And we run that. So we see the output here. If I make that bigger, so it's centered over here. All the values, and the primary key is course ID and department underscore name is foreign ID. So course ID cannot repeat. Okay, so the next is next table to create is instructor, and we have some entries for instructor. Okay, so create table instructor, open bracket. So we have attribute ID, which is of data type character, and it is of length 5, and it is not null. And next attribute is name, and it is a variable character. It is of length 20, and it is not null. Department underscore name is varchar type, and it is of length 20, and it is not null. Salary is of data type decimal, and the length of the integer bar on the left of the decimal point is 8 and on the right is 2 and the default is null. So ID, name, instructor ID, instructor name, and the department name cannot be null. And we know that department underscore name is the foreign key because it is the primary key of the table department. And salary, if there is no input for the salary, then automatically null will be put in place. The primary key is the instructor ID. And foreign key is the department underscore name, and it references the table department, attribute department underscore name, on delete, restrict. So which means that we cannot directly delete department underscore name in this table, in the department table. It will put restrict. It will restrict it because it is being referred in the instructor table. It's a foreign key. Insert into instructor values. So we know that instructor ID is the primary key, so it cannot repeat. So all the instructors will be different. And the instructor name is not a primary key, but it cannot be null. And it is of length 20. So we see all these values over here, all this name, instructor name, and department underscore name is the foreign key from the table department, and that is not a primary key, so it can repeat. So we see some of the department names being repeated, like physics. And the salary is the default is null. If there is no value being entered, automatically null will be put in the table. So let's run this. And let's select all from instructor table. Let's run this command, and if I make this bigger, so we see all the entries being entered. And the primary key is instructor ID, and department name is the foreign key. Okay, let's make this smaller. Okay, so the next table is the time slot, and time slot entries are these. Just copy and paste this. Okay, so create table time slot. So the attributes are time underscore slot underscore ID, and it is of data type varchar, and it is length 4, and it is not null. Day is another attribute of data type varchar 2, and it is not null. Start underscore hour is decimal with the left of the decimal point there are 2 digits, and the right of the decimal point is no digits, and it is not null. Start underscore minute, min, is of data type decimal, and left of the decimal point is 2 digit, and right of the decimal point is 0 digit, and it is not null. End underscore hour is of data type decimal. Left of the decimal point is there are 2 digits, and right of the decimal point there are no digits. It's of not null. End underscore min is of data type decimal. left of the decimal point there are 2 digits, and right of the decimal point there are 0 digits, and it is not null. So time underscore slot underscore id, it cannot be without any values, so there has to be a value entered. For day, start underscore hour, start underscore minute, end underscore hour, end underscore minute. They have to have a value. They cannot be null. So there has to be a value. And the primary key is the time underscore slot underscore id, and day, and start underscore hour, start underscore min. So these 4 attributes make the primary key, and there is no foreign key. So insert into time slot values. Time underscore slot underscore id can repeat by itself, but together these 4 attributes, they can't repeat. So day is Friday, start hour is 8, start min is 0, end hour is 8, end min is 50. So yeah, so let's yeah, so together they form a primary key, start hour, start minute together. So let's insert these values. Okay, let's look at the table. Select from time slot. Yeah, so we have time slot id, day, start hour, start minute. Together they form a primary key, and by itself they can repeat, but together they can't repeat. Next attribute is section. Now section is the values over here. So create table section. So we have the attribute course ID, section underscore ID, semester, year, building, room underscore number, time underscore slot underscore ID, and course underscore ID is varchar 8. Section underscore ID is varchar 8, and semester is of data type varchar, length 6. Year is of data type int. Building is of data type varchar, and it is of length 15. Room underscore number is of data type varchar, and it is length 7. Time underscore slot underscore ID is of type varchar and it is of length 4. We know that building is a foreign key, and we know room underscore number is a foreign key. Time underscore slot underscore ID is a foreign key. So course underscore ID, section underscore ID, semester, year, building, room underscore number, time underscore slot underscore ID, they cannot be null. So there has to be a value. So that's why not null is written. The primary key is course underscore ID, sec underscore ID, and semester and year. So the 4 attributes together become the primary key. The foreign key is course underscore ID and it references the table course, the attribute course underscore ID on delete restrict. So if it is not deleted from course table, then we can't delete from so if we want to delete the course ID attribute, a particular data from the table course, then it will restrict because this table section is referencing the course table. So that's why we have on delete restrict. Foreign key building and room underscore number references classroom, the table classroom, and the attributes building and room underscore number. So if we want to delete a data from the table classroom, it will put a restriction because this table section is referencing the classroom table. So on delete restrict. And the foreign key time underscore slot underscore ID references the table time underscore slot and the attribute time underscore slot underscore ID on delete restrict. So what happens that in the time slot, if we want to delete a data, then it will put a restriction because this table section has time slot ID, has an attribute, and that is a foreign key. So on delete restrict, so we cannot delete straight away the data in time slot table because that particular time slot ID may be in this table section. But time slot ID is a key, a primary key in the table time slot, and it's not only the primary key. There are 4 primary keys, and if we are referencing the time slot, this might give us error. Let's have a look. So we said course ID, section ID, semester and year together they are the primary key, so together they cannot repeat, but alone by itself they can repeat, but together they can't repeat. So yeah, so building, room number and time slot ID. So let's run this, but I think we will get an error because time slot has 4 primary keys. The time slot ID is not the only key. Yeah, it gives an error. Let's have a look at that error. There is no unique constraint matching given keys for reference table time slot. So it's not a unique key. So it's not a unique key. So we cannot have this as the foreign key because it's not a unique primary key, because there are four attributes that make the primary key. Okay, now we run it. Yeah, so that runs quite well. And now let's look at the table. Select all section. So course ID, section ID, semester, year. Together they form the primary key. Building is a foreign key, and the room number, building and the room number, they are the foreign keys from the table classroom. And time slot ID is a foreign key, but it's not unique, because the thing is that the table time slot has four attributes together forming the key: time slot ID, day, start hour, start time. So if we are to have the time slot ID foreign key, it cannot be alone the foreign key. We have to have day, start hour, and start time as well. So the next table is teachers, and teachers has some values here. Okay, so create table teachers. So we have the attributes. So teachers, so we have ID as the attribute, and it is of data type varchar, and it is length 5, and it cannot be null. Then the next attribute is course underscore ID, and it is of data type varchar, length 8. Sec underscore ID, it is of data type varchar, length 8. And semester is of data type varchar of length 6. Year is of data type int. And none of these attributes is null, so we have to have the values. The primary key is ID, course ID, section ID, semester, and year. All of these attributes form the primary key together. So 5 attributes, they form the primary key together. And the foreign key is the course ID, section ID, semester, year. And they are and references the table section, and in the table section, course ID, section ID, semester, year, they are the primary keys together. And if we are to delete a data in the section table, then it will restrict, the database will restrict, because in this table teachers the data that a data may exist that references that section table. So on delete restrict, foreign key ID references in the table instructor ID on delete restrict. So if we want to delete a data from instructor table, then this database will restrict us because the ID attribute in the teachers table is referencing the ID in the instructor table. So on delete restrict, insert into tables teachers values. So primary key, so we know that all the attributes together form the primary key. ID, that's the instructor ID, course ID, section ID, fall and year. So together they can't repeat, but individually they can repeat. So let's run this and let's look at the table. So the table looks like this. So all these attributes are the primary keys. And table student, so now we create table student, open bracket. So we have ID, name, department underscore name, taught underscore cred. So ID is of data type varchar length 5, name, student name is of data type varchar 20, department underscore name is of data type varchar length 20, and total underscore credit is of data type int. Student ID cannot be null and student name cannot be null, so we have to enter our value for those attributes. Department underscore name, so we don't see not null or null there, so it depends, so it can be left empty as well. Total credit, it can be left empty as well, it doesn't matter. Primary key is student ID, so IDs are unique. Foreign key is department underscore name, and it references table department and the attribute department underscore name. So if we want to delete a data in the department table, then the database will restrict because there is a department underscore name in the table student, and that needs to be deleted first in order to delete the data in department. So that's why on delete restrict, close the bracket, insert into values. So we have student ID is the primary key, so the primary key cannot repeat. student name can repeat, and department name can repeat, and the total credit can repeat, and it can be null as well. Like if nothing is put there, there will be an empty space there. So let's run that. Let's look at that table. Select all from table student. So we see student ID has the primary key, and the rest of them are not primary keys. Department underscore name is a foreign key. Then we create table advisor. There are some inputs in the advisor table. So we have create table advisor open bracket. S underscore ID is one attribute. I underscore ID. So we have student ID, instructor ID. So these are the primary keys. These are the foreign keys. And the primary key is the student ID. Student ID is of type varchar, length 5, and instructor ID is of data type varchar, length 5, and they cannot be null, not null. Primary key is the student ID, S underscore ID. Foreign key, instructor ID, references instructor table, and the primary key ID. So if we want to delete a data in the instructor table, then the database will restrict, because we have to first delete the instructor ID from the advisor table. So on delete, restrict. Foreign key, student ID, S underscore ID, references table student with the attribute ID. So if we want to delete a data in student table, then the database will restrict, because in the table advisor we need to delete that S underscore ID, student ID. So that's why we have on delete, restrict. Close the bracket. So primary key is the student ID. So student ID cannot repeat. So insert into advisor values. So student ID has to be different, and the instructor ID can repeat. Let's run that. Let's look at the table. Select all from advisor. So let's look at that. Student ID is the primary key. Instructor ID is not a primary key. So next table to create is takes, and we have some data. Okay, so create table is takes open bracket. So the attribute is ID of data type varchar, length 5, and course ID of varchar type, length 8, section ID of data type varchar, length 8, semester of data type varchar, length 6, year of data type int, grade of data type varchar2, and ID, course ID, section ID, semester, year cannot be null. So they have to have a value. But the grade, the default is null. So if no values are entered, then the database will automatically put null. The primary key is ID, course ID, section ID, semester, year. So the 5 attributes together form the primary key in the text table. The foreign key ID, so ID is a foreign key, references student table and the student ID attribute. So if we want to delete a data in the student table, then the database will restrict, because in the text table that ID, that student ID might be present. So we need to delete that student ID in the text table first and then delete that data from the student table. So that's why we have on delete restrict. Foreign key is course ID, section ID, semester, year, and these 4 attributes are the primary keys in the table section. So references section, course ID, section ID, semester, year. So on delete restrict. So we can't directly delete these 4 attributes, the data in section ID, because these 4 attributes together might be present in the table text. Then insert into text these values. So the primary key, which is ID, course ID, section ID, semester, year, they together cannot repeat, but individually they can repeat. And then the last attribute, grade. So if grade is not entered, then database will automatically put null, and that can also repeat because it's not a primary key. So let's run that and let's look at the table. Select all text. Select all from text. So we see ID, course ID, section ID, semester, year, together the 5 attributes form the primary key. Okay, now we create the last table, prereq. So prerequisite, create table prereq, open bracket. So we have course underscore ID, data type is varchar 8. The second attribute is prereq underscore ID, and it is of data type varchar of length 8. And course ID and prereq underscore ID cannot be null. They cannot be null. We have to enter our value, and together the course ID and prereq ID are the primary keys. So primary key, open bracket, course ID and prereq ID. Foreign key, course ID. So course ID is referencing the course table. So foreign key, course ID references table course and the attribute course ID. So if we want to delete a data in the course table, then the database will put restriction because there is course ID. That course ID might be present in the table prereq. So we need to delete that ID, course ID in the prereq table first, and then we can enter delete the data from the course table. So that's why we have on delete restrict. Foreign key prereq underscore ID references course table with the attribute course underscore ID on delete restrict. So if we want to delete a particular data in the course table, the database will restrict because that course ID might be present as prerequisite ID in the table prerequisite. So that's why the database will restrict. So first we need to delete that particular course ID from the prerequisite ID, and then we can delete that data from the course table. So on delete restrict, close the bracket, insert into prereq values. So remember, course underscore ID and prereq underscore ID together they form the primary key. So individually they can repeat, but together they can't repeat. They have to be unique. So let's run that and let's look at the table. Select all from prereq. Let's make the data output bigger. So here it is. Course ID and prereq together they form the primary key.